Good morning, it's Tuesday the 23rd of February and I'm going to read you a story. I'm going to start the morning with a story and it's about a man called Percy. And you may have seen Percy before, but his job is a park keeper. So he works in the park and he lives in the park as well. So we're going to find out all about Percy today. And the title of this book is One Snowy Night. And as you can see, there's lots of animals on the front of that book. I wonder which animals you know. Let's go. It's cold in the park in winter, but Percy the park keeper doesn't mind. He puts on his warm coat and his big scarf and wears 2 pairs of woolly socks inside his Wellington boots. Percy likes to be out in the fresh air. I like to be out in the fresh air as well. In the middle of the park there's a little hut, and this is where Percy lives. And when he gets too cold to be outside, Percy goes into his hut where it's cosy and warm. The animals who live in the park all know Percy's hut, and every day he shares his lunch with them. What a kind man. I really like Percy. One winter's night, it was so cold it began to snow. Great big snowflakes fell past the window of Percy's hut. "Ooh," said Percy, "I think I need an extra blanket tonight." He made himself some hot chocolate and got ready for bed. Suddenly, Percy heard a tapping sound. There was someone at the door. Now, who can that be at this time of night, thought Percy. He went out to the door and looked out. Who could it be? There on the step was a squirrel. It looked very cold and miserable. "I can't get to sleep, Percy," said the squirrel. "My bed is full of snow." "Oh dear," said Percy, "never mind. I've got plenty of room for 2. The squirrel snuggled down next to Percy and soon began to feel warm. Knock, knock. It was the door again. "Now, who could that be now?" said Percy. Standing outside were 2 shivering rabbits. "It's freezing," said one rabbit. "We're frozen," said the other. "You poor things," said Percy. "Come in and warm up." The animals squeezed into the bed next to Percy and the squirrel. There wasn't much room. "Could you face the other way?" Percy asked the squirrel. "Your tail is tickling my nose." Knock, knock. "Oh dear," said Percy. "Now there's someone else at the door." Who could it be now? Let's see. It was a fox. He looked cold and very hungry. "Can I come in too?" he asked. Percy scratched his head and thought for a minute. "Well, if you promise to behave," he said. "I promise," said the fox, and he squeezed into bed next to the other animals. Bump! Oops! The squirrel fell out. "Who did that?" asked the squirrel crossly. "Running out of room, aren't they?" Knock, knock, knock. "Good gracious," said Percy. "It's the door again." This time Percy had quite a surprise. There on the step was a badger, 2 ducks, a hedgehog and a whole family of mice. They all wanted a bed for the night. That's like the front cover of the book, isn't it? Poor old Percy. And poor old Percy's bed. The animals pushed and shoved and rolled around the bed, but there was not enough room for them all. Soon the bed covers ended up in a big, tight ball. Then, bump, the covers rolled right off the bed and everyone fell onto the floor. "Oh dear," said Percy. "This won't do at all. My bed's too small." Suddenly one of the mice pricked up his ears. "What's that noise?" he squeaked. Everyone listened hard. How could they all hear it? Now they could all hear it. There was scratching, scraping sound that seemed to be coming from underneath them. "There's something moving under the floor," whispered Percy. "I wonder what it could be." The animals looked frightened and the mice all started to squeak at once. "Oh dear, what could it be? It might be a monster with fierce The noise grew louder and louder. Then one of the floorboards began to move. "Look out, it's coming through the floor." Suddenly there was a loud creak. "Help!" cried the animals, and they all ran to hide. But Percy wasn't frightened. He started to chuckle. Then he laughed out loud. A small, dark head was scratching up through the floorboards. "This isn't a monster," said Percy. "It's a mole." "I'm sorry to burst in like this," said the mole. "I knocked at the door, but nobody heard me." Percy helped the mole up through the hole in the floor, sat him in his hot water bottle to get warm, and put the floorboards back. "It's all right, everyone," he cried. "You can come out now." But nobody moved, nobody stirred, and nobody wanted to come out. The squirrel was tucked away in the pocket of Percy's dressing gown. The hedgehog was in his coat. The fox, the rabbits, the badger, and the ducks were all safely hidden away. The mice had even squeezed themselves into Percy's slippers. Everyone had found a cosy bed, and there they are, the mice in the slippers. "Well, I never," said Percy. Percy yawned and snuggled down in his own bed. "That's better. Now I've plenty of room," he said, "and a little to spare for a mole."